During my administration, we all together destroyed the caliphate.
Our political system is corrupt.
We want to build an America that works for the people, not one that just works for rich folks.
We killed ISIS leader al-Baghdadi.
Millions of people believe we are the government, a phrase coined by heavy-handed President Theodore Roosevelt that remains implicit to the notion of government today. By virtue of the Constitution and elections, we are the government. Those who control and work for the government represent us so much they are an extension of us. In any given political or historical conversation, you'll inevitably hear people say, "We won World War II. We fought and overthrew the British in 1776. We adopted the Constitution. We killed Osama bin Laden, and we should pass laws to stop everything from transgender bathrooms and immigration to guns and plastic straws." But have the people who expressed these sentiments actually done these things? Were they there? Did they physically fight in World War II? Did they sign the Constitution 250 years ago? Were they consulted about it? Did they kill Osama? Do hundreds of millions of Americans write laws and enforce them? For the vast majority of people, the answer is no. But you might be thinking, silly, Carrie, we're a republic or a democracy. Of course we did these things. We did them as a nation. In that case, are you also willing to accept responsibility for codifying slavery, throwing innocent individuals in camp simply because of their heritage, dosing people with mind-altering drugs for the purposes of mind control, toppling democratically elected leaders and installing authoritarians, infiltrating activist movements to undermine them, empowering corporate welfare whores, running up trillions of dollars of debt, poisoning generations of civilians with toxic weapons of war, torturing people in violation of basic human rights and decency, faking terror plots, and nuking civilians, to name a few? If you aren't willing to take responsibility for these things, good, because you didn't do them. But you also didn't do any of the seemingly good things either. Some people working for the government under the guise of authority did. Or they went right on to establish their own government without the consent of the people at the time, let alone yours. Yet hundreds of millions of Americans alive today believe we all must live under this government simply because we were born here. If you do take responsibility for any of these atrocious acts, even though you didn't actually commit them, it shows just how much the conflation of individual action or any given nation with the government has dominated your thought process. But if we really are the government, we all elected Donald Trump because that's how the system we accept works. Even if you didn't vote for him, if you voted in the election, you participated in the system that put him in power. Even if you hated Obama and voted for someone else, you participated in the system that made him president. Linking the actions of a select few in government to the millions of people they tax to maintain their power and fund their policies and crimes is a potent propaganda tool that makes us dehumanize other people. Whatever foreign government threat our government tells us we face is not a small group of rulers, it's the entire nation. A nation is not the same thing as a state, yet this is so ingrained in our belief system we can't even recognize a distinction. This conflation can be seen historically with war propaganda and the deliberate tactics to demonize certain groups as evil without distinguishing people from their government. It can be seen today from assuming all Palestinians support the Hamas government, or all Iranians endorse the Iranian government, or all Americans back the American government. Just as harmful, we consider ourselves complicit with or a party to the actions of the government that rules over the territory where we happen to be born. We identify with the institution and believe it really is us, making it easier to rationalize the systemic violence and violations of rights the government commits and has committed in our name. Sure, people may condemn certain rulers or policies and pledge allegiance to power seekers they hope will change them, but most of us wouldn't dare question the nature of the power that makes these policies possible. We'd rather seize that power through the polls, content to impose our views on others who don't consent to the rules we think are good for us. Rules crafted by politicians who claim to have the wisdom and authority to make decisions for everyone. Elections give us a false sense of power, believing we are represented, when in fact it's impossible to achieve this for ourselves without denying representation to others who disagree with us. We get angry when we lose that representation and our enemy gains it, yet we refuse to empathize with those enemies when they inevitably end up in the same position. Yet regardless of who is in power, politicians rely on the violence of law enforcers to maintain their control and enforce their rules. Would you commit this violence yourself? Do you have a right to? Would you show up armed at your neighbor's house to take guns you don't want them to have? What about to enforce drug laws you support, even when these people supposedly breaking the law aren't hurting anyone? If not, why do you endorse someone else doing it for you, or even allegedly having the authority to? In truth, we are only complicit with these government actions so long as we continue to believe the government has the authority to do them. As we as individuals continue to believe violent authority is the best way to organize society, and we continue to believe the lie that if we just got the right people in power, things would be different. But when has anyone intentionally voted to knowingly put the wrong people in power? We're also complicit as long as we as individuals continue to fund the ruling class's escapades and exploitations and the enforcement class that shields them. The real we is what we do as individuals working together voluntarily to truly make a difference, whether that's building and supporting new technology to clean up the oceans, reduce carbon dioxide levels, or 3D print organs in homes, volunteering at organizations or charities that help those in need, crowdfunding innovative solutions like planting billions and trillions of trees to help the environment, or breaking the law to do what is right and serve our fellow humans. We are doing these things, and we are not the government. So stop denigrating yourself by identifying with the most oppressive and violent institution in the history of the world.